After impregnating the clone, the human caught the eye of the real alien royalty. The diplomat's dilemma. Zephyr Novak was not supposed to make history. As a mid-level diplomatic envoy for the Terran coalition, his job was to blend in, observe, and occasionally nudge conversations toward favorable outcomes. Making waves was explicitly discouraged in his employment contract. Yet here he stood on the observation deck of Hestia 9, watching the massive rings of Aurelius drift like golden halos above the gas giant's swirling azure storms, contemplating how spectacularly he had failed at remaining unremarkable. Still admiring the view? Dr. Lyra Voss materialized beside him, her dark hair pulled back in a practical knot, tablet in hand. The atmospheric storms are particularly active today. Something about the magnetic fields and solar wind interaction. Zephyr nodded, though planetary meteorology wasn't what weighed on his mind. How is she? Dr. Voss's expression softened slightly. Nix 7 is adapting. The physiological changes are fascinating from a scientific perspective. Her meridian biology shouldn't be compatible with human genetic material, yet here we are. Here we are, Zephyr echoed hollowly. 3 months ago, Zephyr had arrived at Hestia 9 with simple directives: establish friendly relations with the research team, quietly assess the station's strategic value, and report back any concerns to Coalition headquarters. Standard diplomatic busywork. Then he'd met Nix 7. She wasn't supposed to be beautiful. She was a synthetic clone, created from Queen Isolde's genetic material as part of the Meridian Compatibility Initiative, an attempt to study how the mysterious crystalline-based meridian biology might interact with other species. Nix 7 was designed as a research subject, not as a diplomat or companion. Yet she moved with a grace that seemed to defy the station's artificial gravity. Her skin shimmered with a subtle pearl iridescence that caught the light in hypnotic patterns. Her eyes, deep violet with pupils like fractal patterns, seemed to look through rather than at him. Director Thorne is convening an emergency meeting in 20 minutes, Dr. Voss said, interrupting his thoughts. The Meridian High Council has been informed of the situation. Zephyr winced. How bad? On a scale of minor diplomatic incident to interstellar war. Somewhere in the neighborhood of unprecedented biological crisis with severe political implications. She attempted a smile but achieved only a grimace. You might want to prepare yourself. The corridors of Hestia 9 hummed with the station's perpetual mechanical breath as Zephyr made his way toward the meeting. Research assistants and technicians parted before him, some with curious glances, others with poorly concealed smirks. News traveled faster than light on a research station with limited entertainment options. He paused outside the lab where Nix 7 spent much of her time. Through the transparency, he could see her seated beside a complex array of holographic displays, her slender fingers, tipped with translucent nails that caught the light like prisms, dancing across the controls. As if sensing his presence, she looked up. There was no smile. Meridians didn't express emotion the way humans did, but her inner eyelids flickered in what he'd come to recognize as acknowledgement. May I enter? He asked after activating the comm panel. The door slid open in response. Inside, the air carried the distinct scent of ozone and something subtly floral that seemed to follow Nix 7 everywhere. Your biological markers indicate elevated stress, she observed, her voice melodic and precise. Is this related to Director Thorne's gathering? Yes, Zephyr admitted, taking a seat beside her. The Meridian High Council knows about the pregnancy. Nix 7 placed a hand on her abdomen, which showed no visible signs yet of the life growing within. They will demand termination. I am property of the crown, and Queen Isolde will not permit contamination of the royal lineage. You're not property, Zephyr said sharply. And what's growing inside you isn't contamination. It's a child. Our child. A slight tilt of her head, another subtle meridian expression he'd learned to read. Consideration. This assessment contradicts meridian law and cultural norms regarding synthetic vessels. To hell with meridian law, Zephyr muttered, immediately regretting the diplomatic catastrophe that was his entire existence at this point. Before Nix 7 could respond, the lab door slid open again. Director Janice Thorne stood in the entrance, his imposing frame filling the doorway, silver-flecked beard doing little to soften his perpetual scowl. "Mr. Novak," he rumbled, "how gracious of you to attend our emergency meeting by not attending at all." Zephyr rose. "Director, I was just complicating matters further, no doubt," Thorne finished for him. "The quantum comm is active. The Meridian High Council awaits, and surprisingly, they've requested Nix 7's presence as well." The communication chamber was Hestia 9's most impressive space, a spherical room where holographic projections could create the illusion of being anywhere in known space. Today, it displayed the austere crystal architecture of the Meridian Council chamber. 5 figures shimmered before them, seated on crystalline thrones that appeared to grow from the floor itself. The counselors were similar to Nix 7 in their pearlescent skin and fractal eyes, but where she moved with fluidity, they remained eerily still, like statues granted minimal animation. "Director Thorne," intoned the central figure, "Counselor Prism, we appreciate your prompt response to this matter." "Of course, Counselor," Thorne replied, bowing slightly. "We understand the sensitive nature of the situation." Counselor Prism's gaze shifted to Nix 7, who had adopted the formal Meridian stance of deference, head tilted down, hands clasped at the waist. "Synthetic vessel Nix 7, the counselor said, confirm your status." This vessel carries a hybrid embryo, approximately 12 weeks developed. The embryo displays stable signs of synthetic human genetic integration. The counselors exchanged glances, a ripple of subtle eye movements that constituted Meridian consternation. "And the human responsible?" asked another counselor, looking directly at Zephyr. Before Thorne could intervene, Zephyr stepped forward. "I am Zephyr Novak, diplomatic envoy for the Terran Coalition. I take full responsibility for my actions." "Interesting," said Counselor Prism, in a tone that suggested it was anything but a diplomat who creates rather than resolves complications. "The synthetic vessel will be retrieved," announced a third counselor. "The anomaly will be studied and then terminated. This is not negotiable." Zephyr felt his hands clench into fists. "With respect, Counselor, you're talking about a living being." "Mr. Novak," Thorne warned quietly. "No," Zephyr continued, "I won't stand here while they discuss Nix 7 and our child like they're failed experiments to be discarded." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as the Meridian counselors focused their unsettling gaze on him. "Your attachment to the synthetic vessel is noted," said Counselor Prism coldly. "But it changes nothing. Queen Isolde herself has expressed interest in this matter. The vessel was created from her genetic material and belongs to the Crown. Her name is Nix 7, Zephyr insisted, and she doesn't belong to anyone." To everyone's surprise, Nix 7 spoke without being addressed. "This vessel requests permission to speak freely." After a moment of apparent shock, Counselor Prism inclined her head. "Granted. The embryo represents an unprecedented achievement in cross-species compatibility. Termination would eliminate valuable research data. This vessel proposes continued gestation under controlled conditions to further scientific understanding." Clever, thought Zephyr. She was appealing to their scientific curiosity. The counselors conferred in their silent way before Prism responded. "Your logic is sound but insufficient. However, we will delay final judgment. Queen Isolde herself wishes to examine this situation personally. She will arrive at your station within 14 rotations." The holographic projections vanished, leaving the room in stunned silence. Director Thorne turned to Zephyr, his expression thunderous. "The Queen of the Meridian Empire is coming here because you couldn't keep your reproductive impulses in check." "Technically," Dr. Voss interjected, "what happened shouldn't have been biologically possible. The compatibility protocols were." "I don't care about protocols," Thorne exploded. "We have 2 weeks to prepare for a royal visit that could determine the future of human-Meridian relations. As the director stormed out, followed closely by Dr. Voss, Zephyr turned to Nix, 7. Are you okay? She considered the question with typical Meridian thoroughness. This vessel is operating within acceptable parameters. That's not what I asked, he said softly. Nix, 7 placed her hand over her abdomen again. I have begun to experience irregularities in my thought patterns since conception. Priorities that were once clear have become complex. You're worried about the baby, Zephyr translated. Yes, she admitted. And about you. These concerns are not part of my designated function. Zephyr took her hand, cool and smooth against his palm. Maybe they're part of who you're becoming, not what you were designed to be. Outside the viewport, the rings of Aurelius caught the light of the distant sun, fracturing it into gossamer bands of gold and amber. Somewhere beyond those rings, a queen was preparing to journey to a small research station to confront a diplomatic disaster in the making. But here, in this moment, a human and a synthetic being stood together, contemplating a future neither was designed to create. The arrival of Queen Isolde's vessel resembled a falling star more than a spacecraft, a crystalline teardrop that shimmered with internal light as it approached Hestia, 9. No conventional engines or thrusters disturbed its perfect trajectory. Meridian technology operated on principles that human science had yet to fully comprehend. Zephyr stood at the designated reception area alongside Director Thorne, Dr. Voss, and a visibly nervous station security team. Nix, 7 stood slightly apart, her posture formal, her gaze fixed on the airlock that would soon admit the monarch from whom she'd been created. Remember the protocols, Director Thorne muttered. No direct eye contact, no speaking unless addressed, and for the love of all habitable worlds, no touching. I'm a diplomat, Zephyr reminded him. I understand royal protocols. You're also the man who impregnated her clone, Dr. Voss whispered, earning a glare from both men. The airlock cycled with a hiss, irising open to reveal a corridor seemingly made of light. 4 Meridian royal guards emerged first, their crystalline armor catching the station's illumination and refracting it in dazzling patterns. They moved with eerie synchronicity, taking positions at either side of the entrance. Then she appeared. Queen Isolde of the Meridian Empire bore the same opalescent skin and violet, fractal-patterned eyes as Nix, 7, but the similarities ended there. Where Nix, 7 moved with graceful efficiency, the queen glided with deliberate majesty. Her features, while genetically identical to her clone, were animated by something that transcended physical form, authority, perhaps, or the weight of centuries of royal lineage. Her attire was a marvel of bioluminescent material that seemed alive, flowing around her form like sentient liquid crystal, changing colors subtly with each movement. Director Janice Thorne, she spoke, her voice resonant and melodic. We appreciate your hospitality. Thorne bowed deeply. Your radiance honors us with your presence. Dr. Lyra Voss, the Queen continued, your research on interspecies compatibility has been unexpectedly productive. Dar. Voss paled slightly but maintained her composure. Thank you, your radiance. The Queen's gaze shifted to Zephyr, who felt as if those fractal eyes were dissecting him molecule by molecule. And diplomatic envoy Zephyr Novak. Your contributions to science have been noted. He bowed, fighting the urge to defend himself or, worse, apologize. Neither would serve him well. Finally, Queen Isolde turned to Nix, 7, who immediately dropped to one knee, head bowed in the traditional Meridian gesture of submission. Rise, the Queen commanded. I would look upon the face that mirrors my own. Nix, 7 stood, raising her eyes to meet her genetic source. For a moment, the two regarded each other in silence, identical yet fundamentally different, like the same world viewed through different atmospheres. You have surpassed your programming, the Queen observed, not unkindly. Yes, your radiance, Nix, 7 replied. Is the child well? The question, asked with such casual directness, seemed to catch everyone off guard. Nix, 7 placed a hand on her abdomen, where now a small swell was becoming visible. The fetus displays robust development and stable genetic integration, she answered. Dr. Voss has confirmed viability. Queen Isolde nodded, then addressed the group. I would speak with the synthetic and the human. Alone. Director Thorne opened his mouth as if to protest, then thought better of it. With a gesture that was half bow, half shrug, he ushered Dr. Voss and the station personnel from the reception area, leaving Zephyr and Nyx, 7 alone with the Queen and her silent guards. Once they were alone, Queen Isolde's demeanor shifted subtly. The regal distance remained, but something else entered her expression, curiosity, perhaps. Walk with me, she commanded, setting off toward the observation deck without waiting for acknowledgement. As they walked, the Queen spoke without looking at either of them. The High Council has presented me with 3 options regarding this situation. First, termination of the embryo and reassignment of the synthetic vessel to a more isolated research facility. Second, harvesting of the embryo for controlled laboratory study. Third, continued gestation followed by removal of the child to be raised under Crown supervision. Zephyr felt his pulse quicken with each clinical option. Before he could formulate a diplomatic response, the Queen continued. I find all 3 options unsatisfactory. They reached the observation deck where Zephyr had spent so many hours contemplating the rings of Aurelius. The gas giant hung majestically in the viewport, its swirling storms a chaotic counterpoint to the geometric perfection of its rings. Beautiful, is it not? Queen Isolde mused, gazing at the planet. Chaos and order in perfect balance. The storms rage for centuries, yet the rings remain constant. She turned to face them directly. In 5,000 years of recorded Meridian history, there has never been a viable hybrid offspring between our species and any other. The biological incompatibilities were considered insurmountable. And yet, Zephyr ventured, here we are. Indeed. The Queen's gaze turned to Nyx, 7. You were created as a research subject, designed to test biological compatibility in controlled conditions. Not to exercise independence or create new life. This was not an intentional outcome, Nyx, 7 responded. Few transformative moments in history are intentional, the Queen replied. Tell me, do you consider yourself Meridian? Nyx, 7 tilted her head slightly, that gesture of consideration Zephyr had come to recognize. This vessel was created from Meridian genetic material, but my experiences are unique. I am becoming something undefined. The Queen nodded, as if this confirmed something. And the child growing within you, what will it be? Meridian? Human? Or something entirely new? The embryo displays characteristics of both species, Nyx, 7 answered. Its final form cannot yet be predicted. Queen Isolde turned to Zephyr. And you, diplomatic envoy? What do you see when you look at her? A marvel of bioengineering? A vessel? Or something more? Zephyr met the Queen's gaze directly, protocol forgotten. I see Nyx, 7. Not what she was made to be, but who she's becoming. Someone who thinks and feels and chooses. Someone I've grown to care for deeply. Love, the Queen said, as if testing the word. A human concept our people have studied but never fully comprehended. Is that what drives your protection of this hybrid child? That, Zephyr acknowledged, and the belief that something unprecedented deserves the chance to exist. For the first time, something like a smile played at the edges of the Queen's mouth. A diplomatic answer worthy of your title. She returned her attention to the viewport, watching as one of Aurelius's moons emerged from behind the massive planet, catching the light of the distant sun. The Meridian Empire stands at a crossroads, she said after a long moment. For millennia, we have preserved the purity of our lineage, believing it our greatest strength. Yet the universe evolves around us, and those who do not adapt eventually perish. She turned back to them. I have not come to enforce the Council's options, but to present a fourth alternative, one of my own design. Both Zephyr and Nyx, 7 remained silent, waiting. The child will be born here, under the supervision of Dr. Voss and my personal physicians. It will be recognized as the first of its kind, not an aberration to be hidden away, but a bridge between our peoples. A symbol of possibility. Zephyr couldn't quite believe what he was hearing. And Nix, 7. The synthetic vessel, the Queen began, then paused. Nix, 7 will be granted status as an autonomous entity, no longer crown property but a citizen of the Meridian Empire with all attendant rights and responsibilities. Nix 7's composure wavered for the first time since Zephyr had known her. This is unprecedented. As is the life you carry, the Queen replied. The unprecedented requires unprecedented response. She addressed Zephyr directly. The Terran coalition will, of course, be expected to recognize the child's dual heritage and provide appropriate diplomatic status. I'll make sure of it, Zephyr promised, already contemplating the series of urgent communications this would require. There will be opposition, Queen Isolde warned. The High Council, traditionalists within the Empire, perhaps even elements within your coalition. Not everyone welcomes evolution when it threatens established order. We'll face it together, Zephyr said, reaching for Nix 7's hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. The Queen observed this gesture with an unreadable expression. I confess a personal interest in this matter that extends beyond politics or science. Personal, Your Radiance. Nix 7 questioned. I have ruled for 2 centuries, the Queen explained. I have negotiated treaties, won wars, built cities, and preserved our way of life. But I have never created life. In a sense, the child you carry is as close to offspring as I may ever know. The admission hung in the air between them, unexpectedly intimate. Would you wish to be part of the child's life? Zephyr asked carefully. Queen Isolde's expression softened almost imperceptibly. I would know them, yes. Not as a ruler or as property, but as kin. The word choice was not lost on either of them. In Meridian culture, kin implied a connection deeper than mere biological relation, a recognition of shared essence. There is much to arrange, the Queen continued, her regal manner returning. I will remain at Hestia, 9 for 1 cycle to establish the necessary protocols and communications. After that, I will return quarterly to monitor progress. She glided toward the exit, then paused. One more thing. The child will need a name that honors both lineages. We haven't discussed names yet, Zephyr admitted. Consider Lumina, if female, or Borean, if male, the Queen suggested. In ancient Meridian, these names speak of light breaking through darkness, a fitting metaphor, I think. With that, she departed, her guards moving in perfect formation around her, leaving Zephyr and Nix 7 alone with the view of Aurelius and its eternal rings. Did that just happen? Zephyr asked, still holding Nix 7's hand. It appears the Queen has chosen to rewrite tradition rather than enforce it, Nix 7 replied, a hint of wonder in her voice. How do you feel about that? Nix 7 considered the question with typical thoroughness. I feel grateful. And something else I cannot name. A sensation of expansion, as if my future has suddenly grown larger. Hope, Zephyr suggested. I think that's called hope. Outside the viewport, the light of the distant sun caught in Aurelius's rings, splitting into countless golden threads that wove together in an ever-changing tapestry. Within the station, news of the Queen's decision spread rapidly, triggering everything from scientific excitement to diplomatic panic. But in that moment, on the observation deck, a human diplomat and a synthetic being who was becoming something more stood hand in hand, contemplating not just the life growing between them, but a future neither of their species had imagined possible. And somewhere within the crystalline corridors of Hestia, 9, a queen who had ruled for centuries walked alone, contemplating the strange alchemy of chance and choice that had brought them all to this unprecedented moment, and the new universe of possibility that stretched before them. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.